Imagine a state of mind as still as a calm lake, reflecting everything without distortion. A space where clarity isn't pursued through books or belief systems, but discovered through direct experience. This is the world of Zen Buddhism, a tradition that isn't merely studied, but lived. In this two-part exploration, we'll look into the history, philosophy, and essential practices of Zen, a path rooted in simplicity, yet deep in insight. This part focuses on its origins and foundational ideas, a journey that begins in India and transforms across cultures, ultimately becoming one of the most influential spiritual paths in East Asia. The story of Zen begins in India, around the 5th century BCE, with the awakening of Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha. His teachings, centered on mindfulness, detachment, and inner realization, spread across Asia over centuries. However, it was in 6th century China that these teachings took on a unique form, through interaction with Taoist philosophy. This fusion gave birth to a new tradition called Chan Buddhism, which would later be known as Zen when it reached Japan. One of the most important figures in this transformation was Bodhidharma, an Indian monk who brought a new emphasis to the Buddhist practice, the power of silent meditation and the idea that awakening comes not through words, but through direct personal experience. According to tradition, Bodhidharma traveled from India to China, bringing with him not only Buddhist teachings but a message that challenged conventional spiritual practice. He emphasized that enlightenment is not achieved through scriptures or rituals, but through inner stillness and deep meditation. When he arrived in China, Bodhidharma sought refuge at the Shaolin Monastery, where he found monks struggling with both physical and spiritual fatigue. He introduced them to two key practices: seated meditation, known as dhyana, and physical exercises to support discipline and vitality, practices that would later influence traditional martial arts. Perhaps the most well-known part of his story is his 9 years of silent meditation while facing a wall. Though symbolic, this act represents Zen's focus on turning inward, on discovering truth through introspection, not external instruction. Bodhidharma's core belief was clear: truth cannot be taught, it must be experienced. While Bodhidharma laid the foundation in China, it was Dōgen Zenji, a Japanese monk in the 13th century, who shaped Zen Buddhism in Japan. Born into a noble family in the year 1200, Dōgen was confronted with deep existential questions early in life, especially around death and impermanence. He entered monastic life at the age of 13 but soon became unsatisfied with the answers he found in Japanese Buddhist schools. Driven by his question, if all beings have Buddha nature, why must we practice? He traveled to China in search of deeper understanding. There, under the guidance of Master Rujing, Dōgen experienced a profound insight. That practice and enlightenment are not separate. This realization became central to his teachings. For Dōgen, the act of Zazen, or seated meditation, wasn't a path to enlightenment, it was enlightenment. Meditation wasn't a step toward truth, it was the expression of truth itself. Upon returning to Japan, Dōgen founded Ai-Heiji Monastery, which remains one of the most important centers of Zen practice today. He also authored the Shobogenzo, a monumental text in Zen literature, where he described the relationship between time, self, and spiritual practice. One of Dōgen's most quoted teachings is, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." This reflects a core Zen principle: the dissolution of ego leads to a deeper unity with all existence. For Dōgen, even simple actions, washing a bowl or sweeping the floor, were expressions of awareness. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, could be a gateway to realization if approached with presence. Zen emphasizes living in a state of non-duality, where divisions between good and bad, self and other, sacred and ordinary, are seen as mental constructs. Reality, in Zen, is not split into opposites but experienced as a unified whole. Unlike other traditions that rely heavily on doctrine or intellectual study, Zen discourages over-reliance on words. A common Zen saying is, "Pointing directly to the mind, seeing one's true nature." This highlights Zen's emphasis on direct experience, bypassing conceptual explanations. It's not about learning what truth is, it's about experiencing it firsthand. Zen also uses tools like koans, paradoxical questions or statements meant to challenge logical thinking. One well-known koan asks, "Without moving your lips or tongue, say something about Zen." The purpose of such riddles is not to find an answer, but to disrupt habitual thought and provoke a deeper insight. Another cornerstone of Zen is simplicity. Zen doesn't demand that you retreat from the world. Instead, it teaches you to see the sacred within the world, to discover clarity not in grand gestures but in small, mindful actions. As Shunryu Suzuki, a modern Zen teacher, once said, "The posture is the awakening." Even sitting quietly, breathing, and being fully present can be a complete expression of the path. Zen also dissolves the boundary between spiritual and everyday life. In Japan, Zen deeply influenced cultural practices like calligraphy, gardening, and the tea ceremony, transforming everyday rituals into meditative, intentional acts. In each case, presence is the practice. The action becomes secondary to the state of awareness brought to it. At the core of Zen Buddhism is a deceptively simple practice called Zazen, which literally means seated meditation. But within this simplicity lies the entire depth of Zen. Zazen isn't about reaching a state or achieving a goal. It is about being fully present. With no resistance, no expectations, and no separation between the one meditating and the act of meditation itself. The word Zazen comes from the Japanese zie, meaning to sit, and zen, meaning meditation. On the surface, it appears to be just sitting in silence, but this posture, this breath, and this moment are considered by Zen teachers to be a complete expression of awakening. Practitioners sit in a stable, upright posture. The hands rest gently in the lap, forming a shape known as the cosmic mudra, and the eyes remain softly open, focused but unfocused, aware without attachment. Breathing is natural, unforced. Thoughts come and go. There is no attempt to stop them or follow them. One simply observes. This form of meditation is often called shikantaza, which translates to just sitting. Not striving, not achieving, just being present. As Zen Master Dogen said, Zazen is not step-by-step meditation. Zazen is the Dharma gate of joyful ease. One of Zen's most profound teachings is its perspective on time. Dogen wrote, "Time does not pass. We pass through time." This statement reflects a radical departure from the linear understanding of time. In Zen, the present moment is not a fleeting instant between past and future. It is eternity itself, the only moment that truly exists. To live in the present is to live fully awake. And in Zen, presence is practice. During Zazen, the practitioner doesn't dwell on the past or anticipate the future. The focus remains on breath, posture, and awareness. It is in this simplicity that clarity and insight arise, not from effort, but from presence. Zen extends far beyond the meditation cushion. It teaches that every act, when done with full awareness, becomes a spiritual practice. As Master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "When washing the dishes, just wash the dishes." This means not thinking about finishing the task, not planning your next move, just being with the act itself. In Zen, mindfulness is not limited to formal meditation. It's in the way one walks, breathes, eats, or serves tea. Every task becomes a gateway to awakening, not because of what's done, but because of how it's done. Zen invites us to return again and again to the present moment, which is seen as the doorway to freedom. A core insight in Zen is the impermanence of the self. Dogen taught, "To study the way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be awakened by all things." In Zen, the self is not a fixed, separate identity, but a process, fluid and interconnected with all of existence. Through practice, this false sense of separation dissolves, revealing a reality where everything is part of a greater whole. This shift doesn't mean loss of individuality, but rather the release of ego-bound identity. It opens space for compassion, presence, and unity with the world. Another tool unique to Zen is the koan. A paradoxical question or statement designed to interrupt logical thinking and awaken deeper insight. One classic koan asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Koans are not meant to be solved intellectually. They bypass the analytical mind and point the practitioner toward a direct experience of truth. In Zen, words cannot capture reality, they can only hint at it. As Zen teacher D.T. Suzuki wrote, "Zen is not an explanation. It is an experience." Zen has deeply influenced many aspects of Japanese culture, not as decoration, but as expressions of its central principles. The Japanese tea ceremony, for example, is not merely about serving or drinking tea. Each gesture is performed with intention and awareness, turning the act into a moving meditation. In calligraphy, each brushstroke must be done with full presence, as there are no corrections. What appears on paper is a direct reflection of the artist's inner state. Zen gardens, made of raked sand, stones, and carefully placed plants, aren't just for beauty, they're designed to evoke silence, stillness, and contemplation. Each element invites the observer to experience presence through simplicity. Contrary to common belief, Zen does not treat enlightenment as a distant achievement. Rather, it sees enlightenment as something that's already present, waiting to be recognized in each moment. There is an old Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." Life doesn't change, but our relationship to it does. With awareness, even the most ordinary acts become sacred. Zen encourages us to let go of searching. The path is not elsewhere, it is here, now, and in everything we do. Zen Buddhism is not a system of beliefs. It's not about doctrine or dogma. It is a direct, lived experience of reality, stripped of illusion and complexity. Through Zazen, mindful living, and the embrace of the present moment, Zen offers a quiet, steady path to inner clarity and peace. It asks for no more than this: sit, breathe, be. In doing so, you return to the essence of who you are, and to the rhythm of life itself.